All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Elizabeth Papadopoulos. I'm the director of the Institute of Holistic Nutrition, and today I'm delighted to welcome Diane Murphy. Diane is a graduate of IHN's program. She is a certified nutritional practitioner and graduated from IHN in 2008. She specializes in supporting women with breast cancer, working closely with her clients to create comprehensive recovery plans that integrate nutrition, supplementation, and lifestyle strategies, helping them actively advocate for their health and long-term well-being. Today, Diane will be discussing strategies for new practitioners and graduates in regards to cancer care and breast cancer. So everyone, let's give Diane a big round of applause and welcome Diane.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Elizabeth. I was just telling her what a breath of fresh air she always is. So thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm Diane Murphy, and I graduated from IHN's Winford campus back in 2008. And this incredible school just completely changed my career path and completely changed the course of my health for the better, naturally. And after attending IHN, there really was no plan B. You know, I had to share my knowledge. I had to just get out there and start transforming people's health. And 17 years later, this October, in fact, here I am. I'm still at it, and I've done some really great and cool things with my certification. I've done dozens of events and presentations, webinars, collaborations with other practitioners. I wrote a very practical book called Eat Your Way to Feeling Fabulous, which I just happen to have right here. So I also did health and weather segments for the Weather Network for about 6-7 years. I've built my own practice, designed a few online programs, and my latest adventure was opening a juicery in Toronto, just northeast of the beaches, which just opened in July. Which is a completely different experience from anything else I've done. But every day, thanks to the seeds initially planted and nurtured by IHN, I really get to live my purpose. And although I dabbled in different nutritional focuses like prenatal, postnatal, pediatric, women over 40, working with people with cancer, most specifically working with women with breast cancer, has truly been the most fulfilling and meaningful to me. And the fact that I'm even working in a cancer space is ironic because for years I was completely swerving those clients and referring them out. I just felt completely daunted and intimidated by cancer, thinking that it was just too unpredictable and dire, and what could I possibly offer? I truly just doubted myself. And this wasn't just being a new graduate lacking that, that confidence that comes with experience. This was even after having been a nutritionist for over 5 years. And it wasn't until more recently that I discovered that it wasn't just me who lacked the confidence to work in cancer and nutrition, but many of my colleagues who now refer clients to me because they felt the same way that I did, which is why I wanted to do this webinar, because I believe there really is a level of fear or discomfort amongst many practitioners around cancer. But with cancer rates on the rise, as many of you are probably noticing, perhaps in your own little circles, I know I sure am, our holistic education and experience is greatly needed. So I appreciate you being here today so I can share my journey working with clients who have cancer, which is at least 95% of my practice, and about 85% of that is breast cancer. And I hope that I can inspire you and maybe help you to feel a little better about how to approach cancer in your practice if you're not already. Okay, and here's a little outline about what I want to talk about today. The first one is what led me to focus on cancer nutrition and getting to know my clientele so that I could get very specific in my practice. I mainly focus on breast cancer, as I mentioned, but a lot of what you hear today can be applied to cancer in general. Three major factors that I've noticed over and over again in my practice that I believe create like a perfect storm for cancer to thrive, that are a recurring theme that I always like to teach my clients about. And then controversial supplements while doing conventional treatment. And then three high impact nutrition and lifestyle strategies that I use to try to help calm that storm, that storm. And here I'll also talk about a book that I think everybody should read outside of Eat Your Way to Feeling Fabulous, of course. Okay, so why cancer and nutrition? Well, about 10 years ago, a few of my friends, all of them in their early 30s, were diagnosed with breast cancer. And as they were going through the conventional standard of care, which is your surgery, chemo, radiation, all while raising young kids, I was thinking, what if this happened to me? Like, what would I do? You know, I knew I couldn't just hand my body over to the conventional system, but I really wasn't sure what I would do. I knew about reducing inflammation and increasing fiber and some things like that, but not having any experience working with people with cancer because I had young kids of my own as well. And I hate to be, caught unprepared for something like this were to happen to me. So I started digging, not really into the research, not really sure that I would find all that much, but I was wrong. Holy smokes. Before I knew it, I was just like going down all of the rabbit holes. My downtime was consumed with, by going online by PubMed or listening to podcasts with integrated oncologists, speaking with naturopaths who specialized in oncology, which I didn't even know was a thing back then. I even attended one of their oncology conferences. I was watching docu-series that were full of extremely knowledgeable doctors, scientists, nutrition experts, herbalists, and other practitioners who were specializing in cancer. And I was just soaking up all the amazing, life-changing cancer healing information out there. I also spent countless hours listening to people who had beaten cancer against all odds using natural methods. And I also started speaking more and more with people who have had a cancer diagnosis. And what I was learning was that there is so much hope and inspiration hiding on the other side of mainstream medicine that not enough people know about. So, and it ended up, all this research ended up giving me powerful resources that eventually guided me through the toughest of times. In 2020, it was time for me to quickly put my knowledge into practice when my older sister was diagnosed with MBC, which is metastatic breast cancer, which was a tough diagnosis as the cancer had already spread to her lymph nodes and throughout her bones. And I was so grateful that I invested all that time learning because I felt so much more comfortable that I could help her in some way. Now, she opted to combine conventional and alternative therapies. So she had her conventional team at the hospital, and then she and I worked together to build her supportive team of professionals in the alternative world. She had myself, a couple of NDs, an osteopath, an acupuncturist, who is actually our younger sister, several energy healers, and cancer coaches. I mean, you name it, and she probably had it. And I would drive her to her hospital appointments, and we would go over her many, many scans and her frequent blood work together. This was all new to me, so we did a lot of figuring out together. But it was this time with my sister that really sent me further down the path of nutrition and cancer, especially after getting a passenger seat view of the conventional system. I just couldn't ignore the massive gap between the conventional and alternative cancer treatment worlds, especially when it came to diet. There's virtually no discussion on it at the hospital. Diet doesn't matter, or eat whatever you want, or pretty much the mantras. So I was getting this real urge to go out there and help create more awareness about the healing powers of nutrition. So I had to get really serious and really organized if I wanted to start moving my practice to cancer. Although I had done so much research, which is truly never ending, as so many of you know. And of course, I still had all my IHN notes, which have been invaluable over the years. Something was still missing. And what was missing was learning about the people who I wanted to work with now. So it was time for me to switch gears and start focusing on learning about the women who I knew I wanted to work more closely with, and what they were going through. So I ended up doing what turned out to be one of the best things for my business and my own personal growth as a nutritionist. I did my own market research. I interviewed dozens of women who have had a breast cancer diagnosis because I wanted to know how she felt after her diagnosis, how it changed her life, what kind of treatment did she do, if any, what she was offered in the way of nutrition, if anything, what she thought was missing through the process, what are her biggest challenges, what is her home life like. I wanted to know what she went through so I could decide how best to work with her. So whether you're a new practitioner or are looking to specialize in something, I highly recommend doing this. These weren't my clients or women I knew. These were just women I found in Facebook groups who volunteered their time for me. And I learned so much from these interviews in regards to what they had to go through. Like, even though I was learning a lot supporting my sister, everyone's experience is different in some way. So I got to learn more about the treatments, medications, what it felt like to be funneled through the conventional system, because they had all gone through the system in some shape or form. And speaking with them helped me to learn more about the processes and to refine the terminology that I was using in my own content. So using their words and their experiences was invaluable. It gave me so much to write about, and it helped me to connect to a whole new level of emotion when writing my content than I ever could before. And when you connect with your clients on a deeper level, which is usually led by compassion, I think, they'll keep coming back. So I noticed four recurring themes in my interviews that I could address with my clients to help me connect with them. I'll just go through them briefly because I think it's a good reminder of what people with cancer are going through. The first one, no surprise, obviously, is fear and uncertainty. She's scared to death and she lacks hope because she doesn't know if she'll live to watch her kids grow up, retire, vacation, or be able to do all the things she wants to do. There's so much uncertainty about what her diagnosis means for her family and her future. Am I going to make it a year from now, 3 to 5 years from now? Uncertainty of that 5-year survival mark that's often spoken about. She bases her medical decisions on the fear that if she doesn't do them, she won't survive. A second common theme was the lack of information she was getting, or not getting, I guess. She has this series of appointments, blood work, biopsies, scans, and treatments, on top of her already busy life, which often has to get put on hold. And she doesn't really know what's going on because there's too little information from her doctors. There is no real clear diagnosis. It kind of seems like the conventional system is putting less emphasis on staging the cancers. So she's trying to figure out what's going on, and she ends up Googling and discovers terrifying information about her cancer. And then on top of this, once she's finished treatment, there's no clear action plan once she leaves the hospital post-treatment as to what she can do to reduce the risk of recurrence, and what she can do to heal her body from everything that's just been done to it. The third one is the lack of control. So she feels helpless. She feels like she's lost control over her body, her life, her emotions. So many critical decisions over her body are being made for her. Some of the women I interviewed, and most of my clients are in their 40s or 50s. Like, they've got kids, careers, households to run, finances to manage, maybe even elderly parents to care for. She's used to being a big decision maker and in control. And then now she's dealing with something that's totally growing out of control. So she feels like her fate is strictly in the hands of her medical team. I've often heard cancer patients say that once they're in the conventional system, it's very hard to get out. The doctors can be very confident in what they're doing, which can feel very reassuring, but also very intimidating. So if they have questions about trying something else more natural, they were often afraid, or they didn't push back when they were told that no, this was the only way to treat cancer. So several women mentioned how they felt like they were just pushed through the automated system that involved a series of blood work, chemo, surgery, radiation. Okay, and then the fourth common theme is the lack of support, and this is the lack of support from someone who gets it. So even though she had friends and family, she felt isolated because she didn't know another woman who had gone through breast cancer, and she just wanted someone to talk to. She wanted to feel inspired by other women who had survived breast cancer. Now, I will say that this has changed a lot since I interviewed those women back in 2021. Now I have many more younger women coming to see me who have a friend or a sister or a relative who's going through it at the same time. I have mother-daughters, sister, cousins. So in my own practice. And so I see I see this. So rather than looking for someone for support from someone who has survived, long survived breast cancer, they're going through it with someone and seeking some support with them, which, can have its pros and cons. So those are the four main obstacles that she's facing, and they're all hitting her at the same time. And on top of the fear and the uncertainty, lack of information, control, and support, there, of course, was the financial toll of not working. And this will definitely dictate to what extent she can seek help from alternative practitioners, because the costs involved and the lack of insurance coverage is often really challenging. And then there's the physical aspect too. They feel like pincushions. Their words. They were constantly getting poked and prodded and biopsied, getting PICC lines or ports put in for their chemo. One woman developed a blood clot from the process. They were getting healthy non-cancerous lymph nodes removed to be tested. Some had 3 removed, some had 17. I mean, what does this do to the immune system? That massive factor in determining their survival. So these beautiful women were losing their hair, their eyelashes, eyebrows, and having their breasts amputated. Some women said, they'd been called sir at times, and they felt like they were losing their femininity. But still, she was getting up every day, making the lunches and getting the kids to school and just trying to get through this nightmare. So the more interviews I did, the more I knew that this was the client who I wanted to spend most of my time working with. The woman who wants to know more, who wants to advocate for herself, and who has a strong will to not just live, but to live better. And doing these interviews absolutely gave me the confidence, more confidence in working in the cancer space. I knew that I really wanted to help her to help reduce her overwhelm and help her to feel more empowered. And I was hoping I could do that by providing caring and compassionate support. So I do my one-to-one calls, giving her high quality information on natural healing strategies that she could practice, in her very own kitchen, so she could take back some of that control that she feels like she's missing, and helping her to make informed decisions as we put together her recovery plan that would inspire hope and alleviate some of that overpowering fear, uncertainty, and overwhelm. And even before my interviews were all done, I was gradually seeing clients with breast cancer, and then I was seeing more and then more and more. They were coming from my family, my friends' families, my neighbors, people who found me on the internet. It felt like breast cancer was just exploding all around me. And I was dropping my kids off at school and getting clients, in the schoolyard. And it really felt so surreal. These women were like literally waking up with 6 centimeter lumps in their breast. And I was getting a lot of experience pretty quickly, and I was noticing some trends, some commonalities amongst my clients. And even though we can never know for certain what caused their cancer, there were definitely recurring issues that I believe create this like perfect storm for cancer to grow and thrive, that I always discuss with my clients and use in my protocols. And with all of you here being from IHN, I'm sure you won't be surprised, but it's good to talk about it anyway. And these are just 3 of many. So the first one is to do with nutritional deficiencies. Cancer thrives in a nutrient deficient environment. So although it was long thought that cancer was genetic, only about 2.5 to 5% of cancer is caused by our genes. 95% of the causes of cancer are rooted in our lifestyle, our habits, our rituals, and one being what we eat and what we don't eat. Deficiencies of folate, vitamin B6, B12, niacin, vitamin C and D, vitamin E, iron, and zinc cause DNA damage that contribute to the formation of cancer by causing breaks in the genetic hardware of the cell. And if the cell doesn't repair itself, it can cause abnormal growth, eventually becoming cancerous. And vitamin C, of course, is an essential nutrient that acts as a powerful antioxidant against oxidative stress. The free radical damage is a major factor into the development of cancer. So a high antioxidant diet is key for prevention and the reduction of risk recurrence, which, I'm sure you knew that already about vitamin C being a wonderful antioxidant. But did you know there are 2 phases to vitamin C? It's just an interesting little tidbit here that I wanted to pass on. Vitamin C can be obviously an antioxidant, or at very high doses, it can go from an antioxidant to a pro-oxidant. And this is the idea behind IV vitamin C therapy. It's to get the dose high enough, from 25 grams to a 75 5 grams to increase plasma levels until it changes from an antioxidant to a pro-oxidant, where it can then produce hydrogen peroxide, that's the H2O2, where it can produce it in the connective tissue that surrounds the tumor, but not in the blood. So the hydrogen peroxide releases one of its own oxygen molecules in the cancer microenvironment, and it kills the cancer. And then the H2O2 then turns into plain H2O. It just drops one of its oxygen molecules, and then it turns into water, and then it's safely excreted by the kidneys. From what I understand, the higher the IV vitamin C dose, the more H2O2 is produced. And interesting enough, back in the early 90s, my great aunt had leukemia. She was in her 70s. And then they had pretty much sent her home to die. They had gone through all the treatments and nothing was working anymore. And then this one radical doctor said, oh, well, why don't we just try this IV vitamin C thing? And so they did it, and it put her into remission for 5 years. So goes to show. Okay, the next one is inflammation. This is the second factor of my perfect storm. Like any chronic disease, inflammation is often at the root and always a priority to reduce. And this isn't the acute inflammation that you get with a sprained ankle. It's the kind where if you zoomed out on the body, you'd see this superhighway of systemic inflammation. You know, I've always recommended that my clients, regardless of why they were seeing me, experiment with an elimination diet for a week or two just to see how they feel. And I mean, I'm sure many of you have done that too. You know, and something always feels better. You know, their digestive system, they're less bloating, or the joint pain, you know, clears up, or their skin clears up, or their mood improves, or brain fog dissipates, you know, and a lot of that is due to the reduction in systemic inflammation. So I always have this discussion with my clients and take this into account when I put their dietary protocol together. So there's a systemic inflammation, which could have been a factor in the development of cancer. And then on top of it, there's the inflammation that's more localized, is right in the tumor microenvironment, which is the ecosystem that surrounds the tumor. That includes immune cells, normal cells, and blood vessels. And the cancer cells can change the tumor microenvironment to help feed the growth of the tumor. So there are immune cells within the cancer cell that can fight the tumor or promote its growth. And it's the inflammation that alters the immune system, or the immune cells, so that it promotes the growth. So how do you reduce inflammation in the TME using a natural approach? Well, I believe it's a little more tricky through diet alone, and it may need a more therapeutic approach, but there are some categories of natural compounds that are being studied for their ability to scavenge free radicals, downregulate pro-inflammatory signals, and control the production of inflammatory cytokines within the tumor microenvironment, which in turn will help to reduce tumor progression and invasion and metastasis, so reduce spread. But more research always seems to be needed, you know, especially when it comes to any potential interaction with cancer meds. But I think it's still worth to include them in the diet. So here's some categories for you that I just laid out if you want to do a screenshot. So volatile oils, and these can include many herbs and spices, you know, always wonderful. Your terpenoids too. Also some great warming spices there too, also nice for this time of year. Quinone, there's some examples there. Your alkaloids and your phenylpropanoids, your caffeine and piperine, which is in your black pepper, saponins, which you might remember, you know, outside like quinoa, but also in legumes, spinach, asparagus, and garlic. So we see garlic over and over again, not surprising. Flavonoids, which I'm sure we're all familiar with the berries and the kale, the citrus, the dark chocolate, isoflavones we have here, and then even polysaccharides, the starchy plants, the beta glucans, of course, and oats, rice, legumes, and potatoes. Okay, and then the third factor in my perfect storm, not surprising, is the microbiome, the digestive health. You know, we all know the importance of gut health and being able to absorb all those valuable nutrients as opposed to letting them leak out. So healing a leaky gut is definitely one of my first priorities when working with someone with cancer. Most, if not all, of my clients have had digestive issues, even if they didn't realize it prior to us meeting. But it usually comes out that they've had the issues, they've just normalized them because they've gone on for so long. I'm sure you've seen that in your own practices if you're practicing. Things like just chronic constipation or bloating or other sort of tummy troubles. Um, and if they've gone through conventional treatment or are about to, it's going to get worse. So research shows that cancer treatment works better when the microbiome is healthier, which is ironic because conventional treatment takes a huge toll on the microbiome. For people with breast, lung, and ovarian cancers, often doxorubicin is given at the beginning of a treatment, which is a common antibiotic that's also known as the red devil because of its side effects and its color. And it's often used in the first stages of chemotherapy. So, focusing on rebuilding a healthy microbiome to help protect and stabilize her cells really is critical. So, I'll often do a gut check to check for increased hydrogen sulfide producers in the gut because a sustained increase from gut hydrogen sulfide bacteria is linked to a higher risk of breast cancer development and progression. Research indicates that H2S can promote tumor growth by stimulating angiogenesis and inhibiting apoptosis. So, apoptosis is the death of the cancer cell. So, increased levels of H2S can inhibit that, which you don't want. And angiogenesis is when the tumor starts to create new blood vessels from existing ones to send oxygen and nutrients to itself. So it can grow bigger. So yeah, H2S can affect that. Gut bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, on the other hand, are known to inhibit the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are associated with breast cancer growth and metastasis. So too much H2S, not good. Adequate levels of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, definitely good and something to strive for. So a big part of working with my clients is targeting nutrient deficiencies, reducing inflammation, and supporting the microbiome, which I do when I use my high impact strategies that I'll be talking about shortly. But first, I just want to briefly address a couple of obstacles in working with clients who are going through conventional treatment. Although there are several of them, two of them are timing and supplementation. So, timing of things is important, especially for the changes that I'm asking them to make. So, they may come to me eager to get started, but then they start chemo, and then it's just a whole new situation, understandably. These women are in survival mode. They come in with this incredible strength and determination, and then these treatments just put them through hell several times over. So, sometimes we have to move more slowly and pivot. Maybe we look at their blood work to see if there's a pressing priority, or even take a break for a while as she just tries to get through the next treatment. And chemo can last for months. And this is typically when they lose interest in their diet. So it could be weeks or a couple of months before they're actually ready for me. So we either hold off or we just get back to basics and we do some things that are just very, very simple. It's the most important thing I can do, I think, is to meet my client where she's at. And then that way it helps me to gauge my next step. And then while it's and then the second obstacle has to do with supplementation. While it's normal for them to be told to go off all supplements for 2 weeks pre and post radiation, chemo, and surgery, outside of that, oncologists still seem to kind of have this automated just no when it comes to discussing most supplements. And when their patients want to know why, the answer is no, just no. They don't want to take any chances. They probably also don't know enough about it, but I think they worry with all the new medications coming out every day. They may not know which supplements might be contraindicated, and human trials to show otherwise, sadly, are often very limited to non-existent. So many are faced to go off all of their supplements, which is really, especially if they're doing a clinical trial, for sure. And this can be really tough on the client, especially when they get really gung ho about implementing natural therapies into their recovery plan. And then their oncologist just dismisses it or tells them that it won't even help, which is probably worse. And then there are some supplements that are worth noting that actually have been shown to interfere with meds, and it's usually the herbs. There are multiple active constituents in herbs that give them their medicinal qualities. And so it can stand to reason that maybe there would be an interaction. And this can happen because several herbs are processed through the liver, and they can either inhibit or induce the cytochrome P450 enzymes, those ones that are involved in drug detoxification. So this means that the herbs can affect the potency of the drug and, can make it strong, make them stronger or make them weaker. And some of these supplements that I'm talking about are herbs. Is curcumin, which we know from turmeric, EGCG, the active compound in green tea, turkey tail, in particular. These days, I'm hearing more and more about it in the hospitals. They're just telling their patients to absolutely don't go on it if they're doing chemotherapy, and they avoid all mushrooms, in fact. But there are some small studies that show that it can actually help to mitigate the effects of chemo. So you do get some controversial information. Grapefruits inhibit the enzymes in the liver responsible for metabolizing certain meds, just like they do with statins. Kava kava, St. John's wort, echinacea, garlic as a supplement. So a lot of these things are okay as food, but not okay as supplements during chemotherapy. Or other treatments. Flaxseed and psyllium, well, apparently they're not allowed to be taken an hour or so before or after meds, or they can delay or reduce the drug absorption. I don't hear this one commonly. I don't have clients come to me and saying my doctor tells me to stay off this or tells me to stay off fiber. I haven't really heard that yet, but apparently this is a thing. Valerian, milk thistle, quercetin, and then resveratrol, an immune modulator. This one boosts the immune system in low doses, but then can suppress it in high doses, apparently. And somehow it can also be a chemoprotectant, meaning that in some circumstances it can actually protect the cancer cell. So we always want to be careful when looking at these things and doing our research. Our beloved sulforaphane as well, I3C, indole 3-carbinol, and then DIM, even though very beneficial for metabolizing estrogen, this is a big no-no for women with breast cancer and conventional oncology, and especially with so many on women on hormone therapy. However, I still see it being recommended by mostly integrative doctors in the US under the same circumstances, which is extremely confusing for the patient if they've gone for a second opinion with an integrative oncologist and they're getting this sort of conflicting information. And it's a little scary for them. And is getting a second opinion from a doctor in the alternative world who suggests a completely different treatment plan or says they can supplement with things their oncologist says no to, is definitely another obstacle. So supplementation is tricky, when she's undergoing conventional treatment, because some of them can interfere or improve the body's response to chemo and help lessen side effects. It's different for different cancers as well. So for example, curcumin interferes with that cyclophosphamide and doxorubicin, commonly given to women with breast cancer in the early stages of chemo, but it's seen as safe for people with metastatic colon cancer as an adjunctive therapy to FOLFOX chemotherapy. So there is still so much research that has to be done. And I usually try to help my client find an ND who specializes in oncology. They have a FABNO, FABNO certification that they get in the US. It's not recognized in Canada, unfortunately, but they're usually very knowledgeable and can help with the tricky aspects of supplementation. And something else to keep in mind when considering supplementing for cancer is that not only are they getting radiation or taking high or low dose chemo meds, they're often taking a mixed bag of other drugs like immunotherapy meds, aromatase inhibitors, bone support meds, with this sudden decrease in estrogen, blood thinners, sometimes anti-nauseants, stool softeners, and sometimes some very strong heart meds. All these extra things could that they are taking to treat the side effects of treatment. So pummeling them with supplements is not something that I make priority, especially if they're already overwhelmed as it is. And once they're done treatment and given the meds that they're going to take for the next 5 or 10 years or whatever, then there's going to be a lot more wiggle room for the supplements. So, with the controversy over the supplements, not that I don't give any, I do if she doesn't have an ND, and especially if she's not on any meds yet or has finished her cancer treatment. But I do tend to lean toward maximizing diet and lifestyle and how she can empower herself and feel more involved in her recovery process. It's a big part of addressing that lack of information and lack of control aspect that I spoke of earlier. And it also helps her to see the valuable connection between how and what she's eating and how she's living directly impacts her health. This will motivate her to make the necessary changes. And, again, we can't always know how she got her cancer, but we can definitely identify problem areas in the past, like that perfect storm I was speaking about, and make some changes so she's not living the life that potentially gave her the cancer to begin with. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to my three high impact strategies to help calm the perfect storm and to empower her. Ultimately, my focus is in helping to leverage her healthy cells. So even though she has cancer, she still has trillions upon trillions of healthy cells, 20 trillion being those beautiful natural killer cells. And we need to protect and try to protect and stabilize the DNA of these cells by leveraging nutrition and lifestyle, helping to reduce nutritional deficiencies, and of course, reducing inflammation and supporting her microbiome. All the things that you're probably doing with your clients today, because these are, foundational things that we learned at IHN, and I'm just fine tuning them for cancer support. I'll just mention the first two quickly because it's number 3 that I'm most excited about. So the first high impact uh, method is definitely exercise. Exercise is so important. I suggest 5 minutes a few times a day on a rebounder to keep the lymphatic system moving. We have a heart that helps pump our blood around the body, but our lymphatic system does not. So keeping it flowing is key to boosting the immune system, reducing inflammation, and keeping the toxins moving out. Mastectomies significantly impact lymphatic system. The lymphatic system as lymph nodes are being removed or damaged right under the armpit there. And exercise stimulates muscle contractions that keep lymphatic fluid circulating and actually helps to reduce the swelling. So this one on the picture here is usually one that I keep behind the chair in my little office here. And it's the one that I usually recommend to my clients because it's small, it's easy to move, it's not expensive. A little bounce goes a long way, and I'm not looking to go through the ceiling, although I'm sure my kids would find that hysterical. But my feet don't even need to leave the rebounder before I can really feel it working. And then, of course, some strength training, which is excellent for building bone mass. Her hormone therapy meds are quickly depleting her estrogen as she's thrown into menopause. So it's important for her to build her strength. But for anyone who has cancer or even who wants to prevent it, the more muscle that we build, the more myokines are produced. And myokines are proteins that help the immune system target and kill cancer cells. The second high impact strategy includes stress management, always something you want to include in your practice with your holistic approach. There is the heavy, scary emotional stress of having cancer that she's carrying, plus the stress of treatment on the body because all of my clients are undergoing conventional treatment in some capacity, and it is so harsh on the body. But there's the incredible, plus there's the incredible stress of the cancer itself. It's out there depleting her healthy cells of nutrients and oxygen, and it's draining her. One of my clients, oncologists, suggested that breast cancer is particularly vulnerable to the effects of stress. So deep breathing exercises, meditation, yoga, practicing gratitude, and journaling. These can boost natural killer cells and reduce inflammation. And the great thing about the natural killer cells is that unlike chemo and radiation, they can target and kill cancer stem cells. The stem cells are the slow growing cells that can lay dormant and become a problem later on. But stress management techniques can be free and easily done every day, even if it's just for, a few minutes a day. Listening to people who inspire and provide hope. I personally love listening to Joe Dispenza and Abraham Hicks, but, this is a very personal choice and there are so many out there. Energy work is important. There's the Rife machine that produces low energy waves that some of my clients can make energy that some of my clients use to help make them feel calmer and to improve their sleep. There's grounding sheets that are said to help reduce inflammation. It's supposed to mimic like lying on the ground, which will help to reduce the stress on the body. And I have clients who just swear by this, by theirs. Stress can also be caused by repressed emotions, bottling things up, being surrounded by negative people, and thinking negative thoughts all the time. There's a really interesting book that I love and I highly recommend to all my clients, and should really be read by everyone, I think. It's full of wonderful case studies and it's just so inspiring. And it's, especially for the person who needs hope. The book I recommend is called Radical Remissions. This is by Dr. Kelly Turner. She's a researcher. I kind of think she's a psychologist as well, a therapist of some sort. But so she was really interested in the idea of spontaneous remission. These people who had cancer and then all of a sudden didn't have it. They just, their cells on a quantum level just decided at the same time that they weren't going to be sick anymore. And she was very curious about how this happened and why this happened to certain people and why it didn't happen to everybody. So she went to speak to oncologists and asked them what they do when their patient has a spontaneous remission, and they just basically file their file away. So nothing. So she got hold of, I think it was about 1,000 files, case studies, and she went through them and she did her interviews and she brought it down to about 75 sort of common themes that everybody seemed to be doing. And then she narrowed that down even more to 9 key factors. And I'm going to spoil things for you and I'm going to tell you, but still read the book. And these are the 9 that she got. I think there's been a revised version with 10 that included exercise, but this is the copy I have. And these are the things, and they're in no particular order, but radically changing your diet, taking control of your health, following your intuition, using herbs and supplements, releasing suppressed emotions, increasing positive emotions, enhancing social support, deepening your spiritual connection, and having strong reasons for living. So this was really inspiring because, well, a lot of these you can do for free, but also a reminder that I guess it's a holistic approach in working, in trying to heal cancer. It's not just about diet or supplementation. There's so much more to it. So read that if you get the chance. And then my third high impact strategy and my absolute favorite is juicing. I just love it. It's just, I want to saturate her cells with vital nutrients, and this is the way I think it's best done. And I love it because positive changes happen really quickly. It consistently makes the most significant impact on her blood work and her quality of life, which are the 2 measures of progress that I look at. So quality of life and blood work. So if they're ready, this is where we start. And, if they're not in a place to juice, then I'll ask them to order wheatgrass from the best place I know of. And I'm going to get to that soon. But I've seen white blood cell counts go right back up in less than a week. During active treatment, many of their white blood cells are killed off in the process. And they need to be at a certain level, which is around 2, to continue their treatment. So blood work is done weekly or biweekly, which gives me the opportunity to see where they're at and try to help bring them up between sessions so we can reduce their risk of infection. And the same goes with the hemoglobin levels. And, I'll show you a case study in a minute. But some other positive effects of juicing that can really help to affect her quality of life, especially post-treatment, the fresh juice or the wheatgrass gives them such a beautiful glow. It can take years off their face, strengthen their nails, which can take a big hit during chemotherapy. Their hair looks soft and healthy as it grows back. And sometimes some of the women have mentioned that they're not getting nearly the amount of gray that they had before they lost their hair. Their energy levels are up. So I ask all of my clients to plan on getting a good juicer. Maybe a slow masticator is a nice one. There's affordable ones even right on Amazon. And be prepared to use it on a regular basis because this is one of the best things that she can do for herself to help improve her quality of life. So what does she juice? Well, a good general rule of thumb is to juice the veggies and eat the fruit. Carrots are a wonderful place to start, high in beta carotene, which can help reduce the risk of breast cancer recurrence. So we definitely include carrots in our juice. Celery, really wonderful source of apigenin, which is can inhibit cancer spread, which is your metastasis. And apigenin you can also find in good amounts in parsley, which you can also juice. Now, cabbage, we're going to do if she's got a high H2S, hydrogen sulfide in her gut, then we'll probably avoid this one until she's better. But if not, then if she likes it, she doesn't mind it, then cabbage is definitely a nice potent veggie to juice. And then we have apples, and I know I said juice your veggies, eat your fruit. Well, apples, granny apples are low glycemic, and they just taste amazing. And they're full of, highly anti-cancer quercetin, which is great for apoptosis. That's cancer cell death I was talking about earlier, and also helping to control the spread of cancer. So I like to include those too. And then, of course, there's turmeric, which contains the active ingredient curcumin, which helps to inhibit cancer stem cells, those stem cells that can pop up later that I was telling you about that chemo and radiation can't get, and also helps to decrease the side effects of conventional treatment. So as I was saying before, in supplement form, the doctors don't really want them to take it, but I haven't had any issues with the juicing. And then we would add black pepper to this as well to increase the absorbency. And then we have the beautiful, lovely aromatic ginger, really known to be highly anti-inflammatory, as well as having anti-metastatic and anti-invasive properties, which is great. So also again for this time of year. Okay, so these are just these are just some of the things we juice. We can do cucumbers and beets. Beets are wonderful, great for liver detoxification, of course. But most vegetables and are going to be good to go. These are just some of the more researched ones, that's all. So when they have the juice and they can start feeling better in a relatively short period of time, they tend to stay very motivated to do it. And if for whatever reason she can't juice, usually she's tired or too much on the go, it can be pretty labor intensive, then we just do the wheatgrass, and sometimes we do both at the same time. So this is the wheatgrass that I love. This is where I get it from, because all the testing is done. They are so on top of it with their wheatgrass. They're owners of a farm in Stouffville, Ontario, and the owners are just beautiful people who absolutely care about what they're selling. And I know they get a lot of people coming in from Princess Margaret Hospital and stuff to get this. And all of this came out because the farmer's wife had a breast cancer diagnosis about 50 years ago, and she's still out there greeting customers to this day. Now, as far as I recall, and I spoke to the farmer, I don't believe she underwent any conventional treatment. She went all natural, and this is what she had. She had the wheatgrass. So this company is called Dynamic Greens, and I just highly, highly recommend it. And those are all little frozen packs. So everything is, flash frozen, doesn't even go near oxygen. So all the enzymes are nice and live in there. And he had, even the farmer has put kelp in the soil. I don't know that he knew that there's a connection between, the competition for iodine between the thyroid and the breast, but he puts kelp in his soil. So you're getting a bit of iodine in there too. But anyway, just moving on quickly, to give you an idea of some really positive results that I've had with juicing and with the wheatgrass, I'm going to just do a quick little case study here. So this is the blood work from a woman who was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, which was a very advanced cancer that had spread to her bones, which is very common for MBC. She was put on hormone therapy and she did some radiation. The medication was causing her hemoglobin level to fluctuate month over month, and mostly falling below the normal range, which is between 120 to 160, as we can see here. Anything in the red, of course, is going to be on the low end. Hemoglobin is necessary for the production of red blood cells, which carry oxygen to the tissues. So when they're low, a common side effect is fatigue, really like really, really low energy, which is obviously going to affect her quality of life and maybe lead to a drop in motivation to keep going with her protocols. It really affects her mood, her sleep, and her stress levels. So I often track my clients' blood work if I have access to their hospital portal. So when I saw her levels declining in combination with her having less energy, I suggested juice from wheatgrass in particular. Because about 70% of wheatgrass is made up of chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is almost identical on a molecular level to hemoglobin. So in this example, after her February results came in at 117, we ordered the wheatgrass from Dynamic Greens there in the Stouffville farm, and she started it on 10 ounces a day, which is one of those full sheets. And when she went for her test in March, we can see here that her results shot all the way up to 130. They maintained stable over the summer, where her quality of life also significantly improved, which I believe is really where the real proof lies. And once her hemoglobin went up, she was sleeping better. She was feeling better, way more energetic. She was biking 10 kilometers a day, going camping, kayaking. Her hair was soft. The eczema she had for years was clearing up. Wrinkles were disappearing, and she had a healthy glow. She felt vibrant, alive, which meant being able to do mom stuff with her kids, which was everything to her. So once I started seeing these transformative effects with her and subsequent others, and myself included, I started prioritizing juicing and wheatgrass for my clients. And then eventually I started juicing for my local clients from my house. And then I either had to put a fridge in my living room or find a little place to juice. Then the perfect place came up in a neighborhood that I love. And at the same time, I found a great deal on the commercial cold pressed juicer that's in the picture there. That I really wanted. And it was available secondhand right here in Toronto. And then my juicery was born. So now I'm serving all sorts of customers with all kinds of health issues, not just cancer, but it is really great to just have a little place where they can come and pick up their juice. Everything is extremely high quality, local and organic when possible. It's Murphy Green's Family Juicery. Got to put another plug in there, Diane. And anyway, I can't be any happier with all the feedback from my customers and clients on how our cold pressed juices are helping them. So I highly recommend putting juicing into your practice, even if you're not seeing cancer clients, but to people with cancer, anybody, and also for yourselves. So I'm just going to quickly go through, another couple things I just wanted to mention. That there was, there's more hope on the horizon when it comes to cancer therapy. I know I refer to conventional medicine a lot because that's what I see with my clients. That's been my exposure. But I have some clients who try to do natural therapies alone, but either they run out of money or they get scared and they start conventional treatments, which is usually the way, or they get pressure from family, which is actually very common as well. But there is some shift moving away from seeing cancer as a genetic disease to a mitochondrial metabolic disease involving energy disturbances in energy production, in respiration and fermentation. So mitochondrial energy metabolism is at the core of the problem with cancer. And this is really gaining traction. Um, Moving away from the genetic and more for the effects of lifestyle and diet and toxins that can damage the mitochondrial energy metabolism. And here I've got the book Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. That's written by Dr. Thomas Seyfried. And he says that the cancer is a two-step process. The number one is chronic disruption to oxidative phosphorylation, chronic damage to the cells that produce energy through oxidative phosphorylation, which, if you remember, is our ability to produce oxygen and carbon dioxide through our breathing. So there's something happens and there's damage there. And then there's an increase in fermentation, which is energy without oxygen, so going from the aerobic to the anaerobic. And he says that there isn't a cancer cell that can't live without a fermentation. So just going back for a sec, he was he learned from Otto Warburg, which originally discovered in the 1920s that cells ferment lactic acid, which is a product of glucose metabolism for energy. But then Dr. Seyfried and his team noticed that cancer cells can also ferment the amino acid glutamine, and that so not only were cancers feeding off sugar, I know that's a common thought, they're not just feeding off sugar, but that they can feed off glutamine as well. He does go on to say that cancer cells can't use fatty acids or ketone bodies as an alternative fuel. So his solution is to significantly lower the fermentation of the two fuels and significantly elevate the alternative fuels from fatty acids and ketone bodies, which in turn should compromise the cancer cell. So in a nutshell, he suggests the ketogenic diet. So that way you're going to reduce the reduce glucose and reduce glutamine. Glutamine is in almost everything, like it's in so much. So it's really hard. It's really hard to not get that in your diet. So now this is very similar, his line of thinking, to Jane McClellan's How to Starve Cancer, which is a wonderful book. She has a course about it as well, using off-label or repurposed drugs to block fuel pathways to starve cancer cells as well. However, she does agree that cancer will fuel off glucose pathways. It'll fuel off, and then if it can't get glucose, it will go to feed off glutamine. And then if it doesn't go to glutamine, she does say that it can use fatty acids as a fuel. So she suggests that it needs to be blocked off there too. In fact, she goes further to say that most hormone cancers prefer fat as a source of fuel over glucose. So whether that's the case, I don't know. I mean, I do know somebody who had stage 4 breast cancer that had spread to her lungs, and they gave her about 6 months to live. But she ended up doing the she ended up doing the ketogenic diet, and 6 years later, at last I heard, she was still showing no evidence of disease. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to make of that, but except every body is different, isn't it? But when I was helping my sister with cancer, I was frantically researching all of this. And I even looked at all the mutations that she had, that my sister had, according to a Foundation One report that she had done. This is a very expensive $6,000 test that they do in the US, where they get a sample of a liquid biopsy and they find the specific mutations of a person's cancer. And then they list the drugs that would work best for those mutations. So anyway, I got that report and I researched all her mutations, which pathway they were part of and what fueled them, and looked up all the off-label drugs and supplements that would block those pathways. And it took months and months. There were papers all over my living room floor for months. But the worst part was we had nobody to help us. You know, her oncologist would have nothing to do with it. And he could possibly lose his license if he did. So, and even though we could find some practitioners in Ottawa who could prescribe off-label, my sister got very discouraged with her when her oncologist said no, and just to stick with what he was doing. So unfortunately, it was very frustrating, and all that kind of went by the wayside. But just going back to the glutamine pathway super quick, to block that pathway so that the cancer isn't fueling itself with it, drugs are needed. And they're using antiparasitics to help with this, like mebendazole, fenbendazole, and ivermectin, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard more about, especially recently. But yeah, so antiparasitic, so ivermectin, so these are the ones that can block that glutamine pathway so the cancer can't feed off of it anymore, and then it essentially starves. So, and ivermectin as well, which is good news, has been around for a long time, has a very high safety profile. It also can kill cancer stem cells. So this brings me to Dr. William Makis. That's a picture of him down there on the right. As I'm sure some of you are familiar with him, he's an oncology radiologist in Alberta who's having absolutely incredible success with these meds for all different kinds of cancer and other chronic diseases. And he uses loads of different supplements for support as well. And he finds that they work very well in conjunction with chemotherapy and radiation if his parents are undergoing that as well. If you join his Substack, you'll see his case study after case study. I probably get 2 every single day in my email inbox. on the amazing progress that he's making with his patients. Now, unfortunately, it's all via email, but at least it's something. I do have one client who is his patient, and again, it's just all over email. But again, the challenge is that her oncologist just will not have anything to do with it. So she's not getting the support, and it's also can be hard to find some of this stuff as well. But if someone's interested, they can't give up. I think it's definitely worth looking into. Okay. So that's what I have for you today. And I'm sure you're wondering about my sister. Unfortunately, we lost her 3 years ago for many reasons. I'm sure the cancer took a turn and nothing anyone could do could save her. But I do know that much of what we were doing naturally made all the difference in her quality of life. I don't doubt that for a second. She was part of a support group with other women going through what she was on the same meds, around, same issues, same diagnosis. And most of them, if not all of them, were having trouble getting out of bed every morning because of the pain. They had so many side effects of the medication, but she really didn't have many of them. She felt vibrant and well for much of her short diagnosis. And I think one thing to mention real here is that we can't hold ourselves responsible for trying to save our clients, which is especially hard if they're close to us. They may not be managing it the way that we would or that the way we would like them to, but it is their journey and they need to do what is best aligned with them. But it's up to us to educate and support them and to give them the best care that we know how to help ease that burden on them. So here are my contact details. There's my juicery. If you are ever in the neighborhood, please come by and please tell me that you saw this webinar and I will give you a nice hefty discount. So that's what I've got for you today.
Diane, that was fantastic, and thank you so much. You had such an incredible amount of information and recommendations, and your whole section on juicing was absolutely superb, and your book recommendations and just all the historical data that you brought up, absolutely amazing. Bravo, Diane!
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna ask Diane some Q&A now. You can pop your questions in the chat. All right. So first from Gabby, Diane, we have how long can you keep the cold pressed juices?
Okay, so they are now this can vary from company to company, but with my company, because we use the top of the line gold standard juicer, mostly organic, local ingredients, it public health will say 3 to 5 days because it's not pasteurized, but we know that as long as the lid is still on, we can probably go closer to 7 to 10. But I'm supposed to tell you 3 to 5 days. So once the
Okay.
oxygen gets to it, if you're opening the lid on and off and it's coming on, then some flavors are going to get stronger than others and the taste will change, but it'll be closer to 7 to 10 days when you should probably.
Okay. Perfect. And what basics around diet? Let me just pop up. What basics around diet do you recommend? There's a multitude of diet changes that one can make. What would be the biggest impact?
Well, I think moving away from the inflammatory foods, so the elimination diets, I think like getting rid of the gluten, dairy, sugar, alcohol. Like if we just had to go with the top four right there, have them do it for even and let them try it. It's I think getting that inflammation down is probably number one, and then if you can then throw in the juices, like holy cow, you're just blowing everything up so much, so much better.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. And what's your opinion on low sugar promoted by Thomas Seyfried? How best can one address that with the juices? Do you add fiber to the juice or after?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, because people will often say, "Can I have a smoothie instead and get everything in there?" So that the idea behind doing the vegetables over the fruit, is a good idea to juice more of the vegetables. Go with the low glycemic granny apple is okay. I'm not saying that I'm a proponent of the ketogenic diet as well. I haven't seen enough in the world of cancer to really make a decision. I think it's definitely worth a shot, but I think. it's important to still get all of those vegetables in, and fruits. They offer so many amazing health benefits. So I wouldn't get them out of the diet myself personally. So yeah, so that would be that. And then as far as the fiber, I wouldn't supplement fiber in there because what my goal is to saturate the cells as quickly as possible with as many nutrients as possible. So in 20 minutes, I want that hitting their bloodstream and getting in there, and they feel the effects. I have my customers come in all the time, and I feel it myself. And it's not like the caffeine hit or a sugar buzz. It's just a whole body just calming. You just
Yeah.
feel it from head to toe. So, you're
Oh,
doing something well. And I wouldn't want to deprive someone of that feeling by, throwing some fiber in there. Not that fiber isn't good. We get that later on in the day as part of their diet, but you can't get in as many nutrients with it, say a smoothie or something, and putting fiber in it, because you're going to get fuller quicker and you're not going to be able to eat as much. But with a juice, you can just get it done. If I have clients who are diabetic as well, which I don't have too many actually, we won't do it that way. We'll have to do it with food, but we work around that.
beautiful. And what juice extractor would you recommend for home use?
Okay, so there's one called the Omega, and sorry, I should have had a picture of this one, but this is one I just literally go on. I think they probably have a Canadian Tire. I don't know where everybody's coming in from, but I think they believe they have it there, or I just had mine on Amazon, and it's a slow masticating juicer. So, well, first and foremost, my recommendation is the one that you have at home. Like, please don't go out, and it's not necessary. If you have to get another one, then by all means, pick a slow masticating one. And the Omega one, why I recommend it is because it's a nutrition center. So you can like make baby food and almond butter and pasta and whatever things with it, nut butters, it's got some other things, but it's quiet. It looks nice. It's not too big. Yeah. And it's affordable. It's
Nice.
maybe $300 or so in and around.
Oh, very nice. And do you have any helpful tips in terms of nutrition for patients with brain cancer?
Well, now that's probably where I would move to the ketogenic diet. So, ketogenic diet, often combined with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, has really good studies behind it. So, that's the avenue I would explore for that one.
Excellent. And do you work with fasting around chemo treatments? Do you find there are many clients open to this?
Yes, absolutely. What are they open to? I like the idea of it. If this were me in this position and that's the route I was going to go, I would absolutely fast around there. So kind of starting at a 5 day, you start with your meal and then you kind of work your way down, and so you're not fasting for the full 5 days, but you start at 5 day, then you eat a little bit less, and then by the last 2 days, you should be down to water. And yeah, so the idea behind that is because protein is growth promoting, and health, and glucose is growth promoting. And so when you have, say, protein, like your hair follicles, that's protein. Those cells are rapidly dividing, and what does chemo go through? It goes right for those rapidly dividing cells, which that's why it kills your gut and it kills your hair follicles. So, but if you do your fasting, those cells actually go a little bit quiet. So, not completely dormant, but they go quiet. So then when the chemo comes in, they become more undetected, and then it leaves the chemo free to just go after the fast dividing cancer cells.
Beautiful. Excellent explanation. Beautiful. And how do you address the emotional stress? I know you had that slide on the various breathing applications, meditation, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, that's a really big one. That's so heavy and it's so individual, depending on what kind of support system that person has to go through. And this is so how I address it with my clients is if they don't have family or they don't have friends. I mean, one of the best things I can do is to help them build their team of professionals, and help build a support group with them and for them,
Mhm.
and for me to be there. I mean, it's more challenging now with the juicery, but for my breast cancer care and recovery program, we were Zooming, once a week, for 3 months.
Excellent. Yeah. Lots of beautiful comments, Diane. Lots of compliments. Lots of the participants are thanking you so much. Really enjoying your presentation. Agnes here has a question in regards to sun exposure. So she says that she's read some fascinating research on the inverse relationship between sun exposure and all causes of mortality. the role of UVB exposure and antioxidant benefits, and other mechanisms of D3 and beyond. Do you see the lack of sun exposure as a culprit or sun exposure as a tool for healing?
Oh, I see it as a tool for healing, 100%. So I,
Absolutely.
I think we've seen the increase in cancers with
Yeah,
sunscreen use, to be honest. I think there's a relationship there. So yeah, I think getting out into the sun, and that's a conversation I have with my clients. I think there are some medications that might make them more sensitive to the sun, but I don't come into that too often. But yeah, get out there and get that vitamin D.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. And what amount of juice would you recommend to drink daily?
For maintenance, for the wheatgrass, it would be 4 of those strips, which is 2 ounces of wheatgrass. Normally, I want them to combine wheatgrass with I want them to do both, to do the wheatgrass, and especially and this also depends on how advanced their cancer is. So for someone with metastatic breast cancer, we were doing like, and of course, finances, are a factor, but if they can do it, a full sheet of the wheatgrass, and we try to do this for about 90 days. So a full sheet of wheatgrass and then about a liter of juice. So it's pretty intensive, but and if they can't do that, like we do that for as long as they can do it, right? We have to meet them where they're
Yeah,
at, but that's the goal. If you're doing regular maintenance, I think, to cut, like I do 12-ounce bottles at my shop. I would say, one of these a day. But
yeah,
if your body needs it, so, and, I've had clients who have lung cancer and they wanted to go for their immunotherapy or whatever, but they weren't strong enough and that awful boost or ensure they were getting to build up their strength. And that it just wasn't going down. Obviously, it's just full of inflammatory dairy and sugar. And so, but then what I would do with them is I would do bone broth and I would do the juicing, and their body just soaks it up. So if your client has
okay.
experienced that feeling where they're just like, I just feel so good when I drink this juice, then I don't think you should stop. So go with it.
Fabulous. Yeah. And Danielle has asked any guidance regarding how to help maintain and protect gut integrity moving through chemotherapy.
Yeah, so probiotics are usually allowed through chemotherapy, but not allowed through immunotherapy. So if they're doing the chemotherapy, that's what, they're really in survival mode at this point. So motivation is down, adherence to taking supplements is down, trying new things is down. So you're just going to have to work with that there. I mean, you could try the probiotics. I think even just the juices, of course, that's my first go-to is going to be my juices. That's where, we find the best results, I think, and the easiest because they taste so good and they feel so good. So I would
Yeah.
say between the juices and if they can do a probiotic, it just feels good to feel like they're doing something, I think. And the chemotherapy as well it often has that antibiotic in it. So between doses, maybe it would be wise to do that.
Beautiful. And the wheatgrass during the chemo treatments?
So chemo, I haven't had an issue with. Radiologists, oncologists typically won't let them do it. But we can do it before, we do it afterwards. Every oncologist is different. Some of them will say nothing 24 hours beforehand. Some of them will say nothing 2 weeks beforehand. So it's a mixed bag, really. But if they can do the wheatgrass, even if it's just, I mean, I've done the wheatgrass because it helps to bring their white blood cell count back up. And that is literally just an ounce. Like that's it. It's not like they're doing the full sheet during that.
Yeah.
For the metastatic, for the more advanced cancers, sometimes they are, but not often. They're often not doing that harsh chemo because they're not looking to cure. They're looking to just maintain and manage. So they're not
Yeah.
putting them through those harsher treatments. They're doing maybe like a low dose oral or something.
Okay, very good. And Dana, hi Dana. She said that this was so informative. Do you work with people that have breast cancer and are now in remission, focusing on diet, inflammation, stress management, etc.?
Yeah, so they would have done conventional. I don't have anybody who has never done anything. But the people I have done some shape or form. Maybe they've just done surgery, and maybe so. And I still have those people who are just kind of navigating it through because once they feel the effects of this is usually it, right? What turns them over is because they're starting to feel the effects, and then their body all of a sudden is saying, "This, I'm not aligned with this. Like, there's something wrong with this. I don't think I should be doing this, or maybe I'm okay with this portion of it but just not this portion." So a lot more questions are coming out, and so there's a lot more women advocating for their health now and in wanting to use more natural methods.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Narajiza is asking, can you tell about wheatgrass juice if, okay, hold on, if she will grow it at home or how best to choose wheatgrass seeds. So I think she's interested in growing it at home.
Yeah, I think the one thing about wheatgrass, why I always use this farm, because I know they test it for everything. So they're testing that they know the soil, they know it like the back of their hand, and also wheatgrass has a very high propensity to mold, and you can't
Mhm.
always see that. So that's just what I do. This is just my go-to, and I don't know enough to sort of grow my own and look for mold exposure and do my own testing or but I mean you could maybe find other companies and look at the seed company and look into that and be well worth the research. But for me, that sounds like having a third child. So I would just prefer to go in where someone else has done the work for me.
Yeah, yeah, great. Shaista is asking, can a holistic approach support someone in reducing or eventually discontinuing chemotherapy under medical supervision?
Yeah, I mean these cases are hard pressed to find if you were to ask your oncologist this, but if you were to read the radical remissions and some of those books that are out there like
Mhm.
that, and you'll find case studies 100%. Oh, we see that, you'll see that all over the place. So, I have some clients now who are in the midst of doing that. We don't know which way it's going at the moment, but they're trying. So, but yes, I have every faith that in one of the examples I was giving about, the woman who had stage 4 breast cancer that went to her lungs and ended up
Mhm.
doing the ketogenic diet, who ended up, you know, yeah, I see that stuff
Excellent.
in my own
Excellent.
circle. Yeah.
Perfect. And Betty is asking, there's been lots of talk about glutathione as a super antioxidant.
Mhm.
Is this in any way related to glutamine? And she's asking your thoughts on oxygen therapy as well.
So glutamine is a precursor to glutathione, I think, or it might be the other way around. I can't remember. So, but yeah, some of the NDs will put glutathione, good, amazing antioxidant, obviously, into the IV vitamin C therapy drip. So that's something I do see. The oxygen therapy. Well, we do know now that, I mean, this comes out more with cancer as a metabolic disease. Is that cancer? It doesn't thrive off oxygen. It thrives in a fermented environment, but you know even with or without oxygen, it's just going to use the fermented process. So even if you were to pump it with oxygen, I think you've got mixed results there. I think we have some research that shows, yes, they can't survive in that environment and to go for it. And then we have other smaller and other studies saying that it doesn't matter. They're just going to ferment and feed off that anyway. So I don't have a
Mm.
clear answer for you on that one. I'm sorry.
Okay, very nice. And Marianne she's saying that she's sorry to hear about the loss of your sister. At the same time, it's very inspiring to hear and see the impact you both have had on this journey of cancer and truly transforming lives in such an impactful way.
Thank you.
Uh, yeah, thank you for the invaluable webinar and sharing amazing information. She said it's been truly mind-blowing for her.
Oh, I'm
And
so glad. Thank you.
yeah, isn't that so nice? Yeah.
Mm.
And yes, this will be on our YouTube channel, so you can rewatch this once it's sent out. So we would love you to do that. Also, cancer is covered in detail in our Symptomatology 2 course within our program of the Certified Nutritional Practitioner program that Diane is a graduate of, because Marianne was asking about comprehensive courses for nutritionists and practitioners. Okay, perfect. And from Bev, would eating the veggies raw be a good start before I get a juicer? Oh, good question. Okay.
Well, especially if you don't like them raw, then juicing is a great way to get them down. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, both are great. But I think if you to serve the purpose of saturating the cells with as many nutrients as possible quickly, the juicer is definitely the way to go. But don't not
yeah,
to say don't eat raw veggies. Eat the raw veggies. Eat them while you're juicing them, and then juice.
yeah, yeah.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Would eating the veggies, does your juicing company deliver, or do people just go into your space there?
So right now it's just into the space, but yes, I hope to move to delivery. Absolutely. I will move to delivery. So yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be
Yeah.
great.
So it's in the works.
Amazing. Okay. And Bev is just mentioning this is a great proactive way to go. She doesn't have cancer. So it definitely is for prevention.
Yep,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Rakesh, any active role of cardio or strengthening resistance training? He's asking about exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. So, especially that strength training, because when you build muscle, you build those proteins called the myokines. And the myokines don't directly target cancer cells, but they stimulate the immune system to go out and get them. So, 100% exercise is, that definitely right up there too. No question.
Amazing. First of all, thank you to everyone who attended today and asked these incredible questions. It's such an important topic. And Diane, your whole heart, your inspiration, the knowledge that you bring to this and the years that you've cultivated in this niche, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Everything you did with your sister and all the different clients that have come to you over the years. And now, continuing this work with your juicery is just, it's an absolute dream come true for us to see you
Oh.
do this. And we want to thank you for this amazing presentation today. And we look forward to seeing you at your juicery bar. And
I'll be
That's
there.
right.
I'm always
And
there.
in your private practice, and I know that you will absolutely heal and bring so much joy to and optimal health to many, many, many people's lives.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Diane.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's just been such a pleasure. It's really great. Really great. Thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, beautiful souls. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diane, and have a beautiful rest of your day.